Hey guys, Arvel from Pixel Party here, and today I want to show you how you can turn this into that. What's happening, guys? Today I'm excited to show off a tool I built a few years back for myself, and I thought I would kind of revamp it and give it a facelift and release it to the public. It saves me on an average about 3 to 6 hours per show of work in After Effects, and hopefully it can do the same for you as well. What I created is an application I call Tracer that takes your input map from Resolume and updates your slices in real time. As you can see here. It also does multiple screens. Like that. So what is Tracer? Tracer is an application I wrote inside of Touch Designer, so you will need a version of Touch Designer. For any composition over 720p, or if you require NDI to make this work, you will need a commercial or professional Touch Player or Touch Designer license. I believe you can get the commercial Touch Player license for $300, I believe, and that's for a year of updates as well. If you're unfamiliar with Touch Designer, it's a massive program that allows a bunch of people to write software to distribute that can integrate with other applications or as standalone applications themselves. So the core function of Tracer is to generate line art and geometric shapes out of your slices. Currently, Tracer is only able to do rectangles. You can do rotations, but anything more than 4 sides will not be processed properly. The way I intended to use this is to create all my looks, and then I would hit record at the bottom. This would record all the looks as a clip, and I would then convert that to a DXV and then play that back live, rather than having multiple applications open at the same time. It keeps less strain on your system and everything runs a little more smoothly, especially during a live show. In order to do that, we have our edit mode at the top. This allows you to turn on slices and give them some looks. Once that's done, you can choose what preset number you want to save that to, so we can hit save on preset 1, and then we can turn these guys on that, and we'll save that to preset number 2 right here. Once this is done, I would go at that point to playback, and as you can see here, we have our stuff happening on playback. We already have a few modes already set up for these presets, but you can override them as you want. So if you are going to use this during a show, you can already build your looks, and at that point you just have a single fader that would toggle through your presets, or you could use a DMX control to do that as well. Or if you want to be super creative, go for it live in edit mode. I just have found, especially when you have multiple slices, the less stuff you have going on at your computer at the same time, the smoother everything runs, which is why I like hitting record, but you use this tool as you please. So let's go over a few of the user interface options starting from the top. We already discussed our edit, playback, and presets. Right below that we have our screen select. So going back to Resolume, I have screen 1, which is just a full screen. Then I have screen 2, which has 3 slices right here. If we go to screen 1, there's our slice for screen 1, and screen 2 has our 3 slices for screen 2. Below that we have a select and deselect all. Whenever these are turned off, whatever values you change will not be saved to your playback preset. So this is a great way to perhaps change the color of 2 slices. Hit save. Deselect these, select slice 2, give it a new color, hit save, and then go into your playback mode, and now you have different colors, different parameters that are saved to different slices. Alright, so going back into our edit mode, we're going to go ahead and select all. And below the select all, we have bypass slice. So if we just want to turn off an individual slice not to be processed, you just hit bypass and that slice will go away. Below that, we can actually bypass certain sides of each slice. So we can bypass the left side, the right side, top, and bottom. Below that, we have our patterns. Here we have a size increase and decrease, which can be adjusted down here with your size slider. We have a brightness pulse, which can be adjusted with your brightness sliders. We have a hard strobe. We have a clockwise chase. The trail size on this one will determine how large and how small your trail is going to be. Counterclockwise chase. We have a downwards to upward chase, up to down, left to right, right to left. We have a radial outward pulse, then a radial inward as well. Next, we have a roundness, where we can round our corners. We've already discussed what trail size does. Next, we have distortion. This will add some noise to your slice edges. Below distortion, we have glow. Turn our distortion down just to get a glow. One note on the glow is it is pretty processor heavy, so if it's an effect you don't think you'll need, I would recommend keeping that off. Next, we have feedback. I'm going to turn down our trail size and our size in general. Under the feedback, we have the feedback scale. Below that, we have our rotate. And we also have a feedback blur as well. Below that, we have our feedback blend mode, which is add, difference, and subtract. And these can be used in coordination with Resolume. To get different effects. And if we turn off our feedback and let's put on a pattern, we have a speed offset here where you can slow it down or speed it up. And these can also be applied individually as well. So if we want that, and we go to playback, you can see we have different speeds. Below that, we have our BPM offset. So let's say we have BPM offset 1 set for slice 1, offset 2 for 2, 3 for 3, and we go back to our playback. We now have chases we can do using our offset. Alright, and if you haven't already picked up already, you can also select your slices just by clicking on them as well. Also, if you hold down on your right mouse button, you should be able to move around, zoom in, and up here on the top right is your zoom magnifier. If you just click on that, it'll reset, or if you again hold down on your right mouse button, zoom in, you can hit your right and left mouse button at the same time and it'll reset. Alright, up next we have our color. Down here it's just your typical color picker that you can use to change colors. We've kind of briefly discussed that earlier. And then something else we haven't touched yet is the texture source at the bottom. What this allows you to do is to choose between Tracer's own color source, or you can bring in a spout or MDI source into Tracer to be used as the texture. Just to note, whenever you do bring in one of these textures, your color change above is going to be disabled, and your color change will need to be done through Resolume as an external process. So if we want to bring in the texture, what we'll need to do is go down to our settings, and we will touch on all of this in just a second, but scroll down to the very bottom and we can have a spout source or a NDI source. If you want to use NDI in or out, again you need to have a Touch Player commercial or Touch Designer commercial or pro license in order to use that feature. But for the free users, you can use spout. That is unrestricted. So what we can do is turn this guy on, and here we see it inside of Tracer. You have your drop down for your different sources. We're using Arena Composition. You can get really fancy and creative with this by creating screens and then sending the screens out via spout or NDI this way. But for this example, I just went to output and I turned on spout this way. So now if we come down and click on spout, we now have our texture from Resolume feeding into Tracer. And then from here we can add feedback to it, we can add distortion, all sorts of things. But for the remainder of this tutorial, I'm just going to keep it on color and keep it simple. Alright, so let's dive into our settings. Clicking settings at the bottom will take you to your settings menu. Up at the top we have Resolume version. This is very important to note. If you're running 6, keep it on 6. If you're running 7, keep it on 7. We have load on start. Whenever this is enabled, whenever you start Tracer, it will automatically pull the latest config from your Resolume. Auto refresh auto refreshes. So if we come into Resolume, change our rotation, notice how it snaps. If we come in here and turn off auto refresh, does not update. There we go. UI, if you're left-handed and want to stay on the left, cool. If you're right-handed, you can move this around. I don't know if it actually matters if you're left or right-handed, but some users prefer it left, some prefer it right. Thought I'd give you that choice. Next we have render all screens. When this is turned on, it does slow down your system, but it also gives you the ability to show multiple screens within Resolume. This is definitely going to be for your larger stages that have 1,000 slices coming out of 4 or 5 different screens. But yeah, that is the option for that. If you keep that off, your system will thank you and run a lot more efficiently. Up next, we have our OSC in and out ports and input and output toggles, and our DMX in. Within Resolume, we have a FFGL plugin that can control Tracer. The control will be coming from the OSC in. If you're not familiar with OSC, just go to your arena preferences, clicking on OSC, and then from here you can choose what your ports are going to be. For DMX, it's pretty basic as a fixture. We just have a preset select on whatever channel you choose. For those of you who want to make more presets than just 10, what you can do is actually save your presets as a file and then create more, and then you can come back and load those presets later on to be recalled. You have a save path and a load path. Also, all of this information is stored within your local documents folder under the folder Tracer. This information is available right here where my mouse is moving. After that, we have a local record. And down here for your local record, you can choose what folder destination you want it to be recorded in, what codec, and what color profile. By default, this also goes to your documents tracer. I find it's easier just to keep everything in one location, but you can choose that. By turning local record off, whenever you click record down below, it will not record to your local machine. The way we have record set up is it'll start recording on your first downbeat and end right before your fourth downbeat ends. This is kind of help you create a seamless look that doesn't require too much trimming in post-processing. By default, Resolume will also record when you hit record down below. In order to do that, just hit record here and it will send out a OSC to whatever your OSC out port is to manually trigger the record button within Resolume. This also follows the BPM trim system I set in place to help you reduce any sort of trimming as needed. To bypass that feature, just turn off your OSC out and it'll no longer send that command to Resolume. Next, we have the number of bars that you wish Tracer to record. What this does is it'll start the recording on the downbeat and end it on the fourth beat. This will help you create seamless loops without the need to trim off the start and end to get it to be seamless. Below that, you will have the BPM sync, where you can choose a local sync to change your speed. You can choose Ableton link. Or you can choose Resolume. The difference between Ableton and Resolume is if you want Ableton to drive everything, keep it on Ableton. One note with Ableton on Resolume is when Ableton is enabled, you no longer have the option to resync, which is why we added the Resolume sync as well, which allows you to sync up to Resolume and actually hit resync in Resolume, which will also resync Tracer. For the rest of this tutorial, we'll keep it on local. One thing to note is when Ableton or Resolume sync is turned on, your local sync is bypassed. You can also disable record to Resolume by turning this on or off as well, but doing the OSC out will also give you the same result. Your spout sources and NDI sources are listed here. We kind of went over this earlier. You can also bypass your spouts and NDI sources here as well. Over here on the right, kind of got a little bit of a production note up above that tells you default locations. Down below will show you your DMX input in real time. So if you change your DMX start address channel to 1, just create a fader. Whenever you turn that fader up or down, it'll actually show you what your input select is going to be from DMX. Do note on DMX, whenever you enable DMX presets, it'll automatically change the mode to playback, and then your presets will be selected using the DMX. So once DMX has been turned on, you can't go back into edit mode unless you're manually inside a tracer putting it back into edit mode. Down below we have Resolume record. Once you hit record, this will show you in real time when Resolume is actually recording and when it's not. So if you're working strictly inside of the tracer UI, you don't need to toggle back and forth to see if you're actually recording inside Resolume. This will kind of give you a readout. And then over on the far right, we have our OSC input, channels, and values. And at this point, let's jump back to Resolume, and I'll show you the FFGL interface that can control tracer from within Resolume. Alright, so if we go to effects, we should now have a tracer effect. You can drag and drop this wherever you like. Personally, I like just keeping it in the composition. You can bypass it and bypass it. Doesn't make a difference. The bypass has no effect. If you notice here, the FFGL looks very similar to the setup of the tracer UI right here. We have edit and playback mode. One thing to note is within the FFGL there is no select all or deselect all, and obviously you can't just click these to select them. So whenever you actually enable any of these UI parameters, it automatically selects all of your slices within tracer to allow simultaneous control. But just as we are going through the UI and tracer here, we're also getting the same settings over here. For instance, our size is on 18, size is 100, size is not 100. So it's just a basic OSC override, but it allows you to work within tracer without actually having the UI open, just sticking with inside Resolume. One thing I did forget to mention earlier is in order to get your FFGL settings coming out of Resolume into tracer, you will need to enable OSC out, either by going to shortcuts, OSC, and output all OSC messages, or you can do a custom one, and then you'll have to manually go in here and turn on all of these OSC outputs in order to output it. I find it easier just to output all OSC messages, and that should get you up and running. Also at the bottom we have our record button here as well. This will trigger your Resolume record and your local record at the same time, or you can just click record within Resolume and not record locally. Just depends on how you want to control your setup. To actually bring in the tracer sources, we need to go to our source tab, and at the bottom we will have our NDI sources, and we'll have our spout sources. Over here I kind of just do a thumbnail update just to get rid of your source text, your thumbnails. Final notes for tracer. At the bottom we do have a refresh button. For some reason, if your screen's not looking right and you've done a couple updates, try clicking the refresh a few times. That should get you going. But all in all, if you make a change, within Resolume, as soon as you hit save, it should automatically push that through into Tracer. We also have a, let me turn this off real quick. We have a little help button down here as well. Anything that turns orange should give you a little bit of a update on what this feature does. That also applies to your settings. And if you see something over here on the right that says limited, that is showing you that your Touch Designer or Touch Player version is non-commercial, and that does again limit you to a 720p output and disables NDI. To get a commercial license, you'll want to go to Derivative's website and into their store. If you don't have Touch Designer or Touch Player, I have also provided download links inside of your programs folder under Pixel Party and Tracer. The preset save at the top obviously saves the presets, and the save button at the bottom will actually save your entire project file. So whenever you reopen it, you'll pick up right where you left off. And then we also have our FPS, GPU, and CPU memory readouts down here, just to kind of give you a heads up of how much of a strain on your system Tracer is pushing. Well, thanks for sitting through this tutorial, and hopefully you guys will have some fun creating some fun looks with Tracer into Resolume. If you guys have any questions, feel free to drop me a line at support@pixelparty.us, and I'll see you around.